Hey everyone, this is Cameron, the co host and editor of Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere where podcasts can be found. And if you can, consider supporting our Patreon. That way we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about how we're feeling with 2025's animation feature film scene. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, so on with the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And yeah, we are going to talk about 2025 in animation. And, an article came out in the Hollywood Reporter about Elio, and that's kind of where we wanted to springboard our free-flowing thoughts. So before we dive too deep into the weeds of that, I just want to ask a point-blank question. Cameron, do you think 2025 has been a good year for animation?
So here's been my spicy take about animation these past few years. I want to say this really did start with 2023 because all things considered, like the 2020s have been very weird with animation. Mostly because, well, the pandemic really put a number on us and it, for better or worse, changed a whole lot of the landscape of feature animation and just animation in general. So to go from 2020, which had very little, even though it still had like Pixar's Soul, Onward, Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon, and Wolfwalkers and Angaku Our Sound, 2021 was a vast improvement. Mostly because it had stuff like The Mitchells versus Machines, Wish Dragon, Belle, Encanto, Luca. It was starting to get pretty good. And then with 2022, it got even better. And it was the first year in a while where Pixar and Disney did not win the Best Animated Feature Oscar, with it going to Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. 2023 was then the real turning point of how I was feeling with animation because somehow some executive got the idea of starve the family audience and force them to see the new Marvel Disney live action remake or whatever Pixar or Disney is putting out. Or in 2023's case, everyone is just going to simply go and see the Super Mario movie 500 different times.
Yeah.
And it's not like 2023 was a bad year. I mean, you can't be a bad year when you have films like Robot Dreams, Nimona, and Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. It's more how the theatrical industry has treated the medium of animation. Like since 2023, they've had these same release strategies. Maybe put a few interesting films for February and March, but when April hits, you starve them out. You don't give them anything to watch. 2024 did this with having Kung Fu Panda 4 in January, I think, if I recall. And then after April or May, we would then get the Garfield movie. And then for some reason, June and July would sprinkle in a few more animated films, and then it would just die out completely until September of last year when Paramount and DreamWorks decided to, well, joust to see who would win at the box office with The Wild Robots and Transformers 1. I guess we all know what happened there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And with 2025, it's pretty much the same thing. I don't know. Well, I do know why they are doing this because it has worked for 3 years in a row. You give them something in January, which in this case was Dogman, and then you give them nothing until Elio came out.
And before people start to bring up the day the Earth blew up, that was technically a 2024 release, and Catch Up Entertainment, God bless them, they just didn't have the manpower to give that as wide a release as some of the major studios.
I mean, like, I love that movie. I saw it back at Animation as Film and probably one of the best theatrical experiences I had last year. But even then, it was wholly reliant on smaller releases sprinkled throughout that, let's be real, families aren't going to go to, which sucks because I remember really liking A Sloth Story or whatever that one was. And of course, Viva Kids has basically been getting small time returns on their releases since they keep making money off of their films. For some reason, we have like, or at least so far, we had one animated Jesus movie, which had like a huge star studded cast for some reason. I mean, I love Oscar Isaac, but I'm not going to go watch a Jesus movie because it's by Angel Studios, the same grifters that basically forced a mediocre Sex Pest movie made by a sex pest, or about a sex pest, by the way, to rake in millions of dollars. So no, I'm not going to support your freaking movies, Angel. And they're trying to hide the fact that they're Angel Studios in their releases. There's that one movie with Tony Hale in it recently that's been getting a lot of like advertisement run.
Oh, Sketch.
Yeah, Sketch. And it's like, oh, look how cool, interesting this movie. Oh, it's Angel Studios. Never mind. Their name has become synonymous with garbage. And even G Kids, one of my favorite distributors, one of my favorite companies to look to and be inspired by. I mean, I don't want to say they dropped the ball because they made a lot of money with these movies, but they wholly relied on the anime compilation film. They had like the Gundam G Quicks, they had Witch Watch, they did the Dandadan one. Their one non-anime compilation film that wasn't a Ghibli re-release was Colorful Stage the Movie, which is unfortunately my least favorite animated film of the year.
Same.
So to wait for something to talk about with June giving us two of the best animated films of the year so far with Predator's Killer of Killers and K-pop Demon Hunters. And yes, I know Neza 2 came out. It was amazing. I loved it. It had a great theatrical experience there, and it was a wonder to see on the big screen. Okay, so where the hell is that movie coming out? Is there any distributor who will put it out on digital or Blu-ray? Or are they pulling a Toho and they're going to release it on their own accord? It's deeply frustrating that, or it's just kind of funny and sad that Netflix, of all companies, decided to pick up the slack with some of the films that they either greenlit or bought to distribute over here, like The Incredible Lost in Starlight. I think 2025 has been a pretty mediocre year so far because not only are the more interesting films like The Bad Guys 2 and Gendy Tartakovsky's Fixed, the first 2D adult animated film that should have gone to theaters, but then, well, unfortunately, Netflix had to save its ass because Warner Brothers was getting ready to sell it again or to sell another movie. And I'm not saying it was like the very first 2D animated feature, but it was going to be like one of the first 2D animated features aimed at adults put into theaters since maybe like the 70s.
Jeez.
And it sucks. This year has kind of sucked. I mean, I love Dogman. And then, unfortunately, one of my favorite films of the year so far, Toto-chan, The Girl in the Window, is nowhere to be found via streaming, digital VOD releases. No distributor has picked it up, even though there was that whole article the other day talking about how anime is the new battleground between all the streaming platforms.
I read that article and saw those numbers, but as great as those numbers look on paper, we're not exactly seeing the results when it comes to film. If we're talking about TV and seasonal anime, that's a different conversation.
Right. And even now, it's like I'm getting ready to post our document for the summer season. And I just found out that one of the more interesting looking anime of summer 2025 just hit Prime. And it's like, okay, Prime once again buys anime and doesn't advertise it again. It's weird. It's so weird. This year is weird. I don't like it. I really just don't like it. And unfortunately, a big reason of that is, unfortunately, Pixar's Elio. I don't hate the movie. I don't think it's the worst animated film of the year. I'm probably going to enjoy it way more than Sneaks or Smurfs or, well, we're not watching Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie.
No.
But it'll probably be as good as maybe the SpongeBob SquarePants, just search for SquarePants or In Your Dreams. And yet, with Elio's failure and the Hollywood Reporter article talking about its disastrous release, and unfortunately, just how I have felt about a lot of Disney Pixar releases like these past few years, I am not fully looking forward to Zootopia 2. I want it to be good. I want to be excited for it. But I can't find a reason to be excited, which is weird. Like, you got Ki Hui Kwan as Gary the Snake. That sounds delightful. And I've seen that teaser a couple of times in theaters, and I love his animation. But with how Disney has handled shit recently, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I'm excited for it.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm kind of in the same boat as I'm not feeling the excitement that I should be feeling. If we're talking about the Disney from 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I would be much more jazzed for what they have coming down the pike. But as it is now, knowing what we know about what's going on behind the scenes, it's making it difficult, not impossible, but difficult to get excited for what they have cooking up.
So here's the thing. Pixar, as a company, is not new to troubled productions. We all know by now the nightmare production of Toy Story 2, where someone accidentally deleted 90% of the movie, and by miracle in a handbasket, someone had a backup. The technical director, Galen Sussman, who Pixar decided to lay off. No offense, but if I did something as important as save the production of Toy Story 2, I should get permanent residence in Pixar.
Seriously.
A full-on tenure position at Pixar. Even if I'm just sitting there eating a donut. It's like, I could just wave to everyone and say hi, I saved Toy Story 2. You can't do anything about me. And then obviously there was the whole production with Ratatouille, where the original director left because he had no faith in the story department to get the story working. And then Brad Pitt got brought in. No, not Brad Pitt, Brad Bird. If you want Brad Pitt to be brought in into an animated movie, well, don't, because we all saw what happened to Sinbad. And which kind of sucks. I kind of like Sinbad, the animated film that DreamWorks did, and then it just killed or helped kill 2D animation in theaters. Anyway, Brad Bird was brought in to save Ratatouille. And then Brave in 2012 had Grace Chapman, or was it Grace Chapman? Was that her
Brenda
name?
Chapman.
Brenda Chapman was replaced by Mark Andrews during the production of Brave, and we unfortunately got to see a little bit of a prototype of what a underwhelming Pixar film is. Even if it still has its fans, I understand why Brave has fans. But after coming out the year after Cars 2, and I know some people are going to be like, oh, Cars 2 isn't that bad. And it's like, it kind of is. It is. I'm sorry. I don't care what if you like that movie. There's a reason why it's Pixar's, at least for right now, worst reviewed movie. And even on top of that, The Good Dinosaur was constantly reworked and recast during its entire production until they just gave us a very animated film that was Pixar's first official bomb. Like, yeah, maybe some of the films didn't do as well as they should have, like Monsters University, but The Good Dinosaur bombed. Something that Pixar has never had to deal with. Even Cars 2, with all the help of its merchandise, was able to make Pixar and Disney a lot of freaking money. And now, like, as we get to our current slate of Pixar films, like The Incredibles 2, while, yeah, I still think it's okay. Like, it's a pretty solid movie. It had a production year taken off it because they wanted to push Toy Story 4, if I recall, to 2019.
Oh, yep. I remember that.
And it was the first time in freaking forever, I think since 2004, 5 or something, when Disney did not win Best Animated Feature, which went to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And, shout out to the unfortunate store employee who had to put the signs up for the Ralph Breaks the Internet display case where it said, like, Oscar winner, Ralph Breaks the Internet. And it's like, some poor schmuck at Disney or at that store had those specially printed that they thought Ralph Breaks the Internet. Again, Ralph Breaks the Internet was going to be the Oscar winning animated feature.
Was it even nominated?
Yes. You could have replaced so many movies like that The Incredibles 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet took. Like, 2018 was full of so many amazing foreign animated features. You could have easily put in, like, Funan, Bunwell, and the Labyrinth of the Turtles, or... Anyway, the point was, that wasn't a good year for Pixar, either. Especially since the fact that the most interesting and memorable thing to come out of Incredibles 2, outside of the incredible Jack sequences, was the short that came in front of it, Bow. And Domishi then getting skyrocketed to making, like, Turning Red, which is really freaking good. But now, and there was always, like, rumblings of something going on behind at Pixar. So there was always going to be, like, there was always something going on at Pixar. But now, after, 2017 and such, John Lasseter got the boot and is now making his ultimate cinematic classics at Skydance. We'll tell you when that actually happens. Then you think it's like, okay, smooth sailing. Pete Docter's in charge. He's the guy who's brought in pretty much the most winners for Pixar and such. This should be good. They're going to keep making personal stories. Then the pandemic hits. And because of JPEG or whoever decided to do this, started putting Pixar's films on Disney Plus to increase the value of those streaming services. Instead of just delaying them, they put them on Disney Plus, especially with the infamous year of 2022, where like a last second decision was made where Turning Red got put onto Disney Plus, and for some reason they put out Lightyear. I mean, I get why they put out Lightyear. The bigger bet and the safer bet was, let's put the Toy Story adjacent movie out in theaters. And look how well that did. You had a bunch of weirdo incel man children reactionaries reacting to a stupid little kiss that lasts for 5 whole seconds. And the movie basically bombed. And then we get to 2023 where, well, this is a case of like everyone made fun of it, even though there were like way worse movies at the Cannes Film Festival. Like people who kept making jokes about like, oh, the best movies in the world are at the Cannes Festival. Also Elemental. And it's like, I'm sure half of you would have rather have watched Elemental than some of the worst movies that showed up during the Cannes Film Festival every other year. So pardon me for thinking that like the Cannes Film Festival deserves respect and then shows Megalopolis. So again, there was rumblings about like bad working conditions at Pixar and Disney coming down on them hard on a few things. That kiss in Lightyear put so many little executive guard dogs and yes men and ass kissers inside the system of Pixar that Pete Docter, who is the creative director and the head of Pixar, is just letting the execs get their way. We all knew about the Inside Out 2 production fiasco of Riley was going to be more queer. And then they were like, you got to downplay that. And it's like, fucking why? We got the animation done. We can't just change how she looks at that new character. And then we also know about the Dream production fiasco where Pixar was like, we have no idea what we're doing. We don't make TV shows. We don't make limited series. We make, well, movies. And then with Elio getting delayed so many times, and at first you think it's going to be it was like the writer's strike or whatever, but no. It's never the strikes. Just as a reminder, the strikes are not bad. So it was basically because some Pixar execs watched the first form, according to the Hollywood Reporter article, the first form of the movie where everyone was like really jazzed about it, super hyped up. And then they were like, wait, is that lead character gay?
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, it's that surprise groundhog meme or hamster meme where it's like da da da, and they were like, "You can't do this. You got to rework the entire movie." And the original director was just like, "Fuck, okay, fuck you," and they're like, oh, "But don't leave. We're gonna put you on Coco too. Don't worry about that." And it's like, okay. There doesn't need to be a Coco too. Then with Elio, they basically sanded down the edges of the whole story, which was supposed to be this metaphorical journey and coming of age story for Elio, inspired by the director growing up like a closeted queer kid in a world that he felt unsafe and unloved in, to find his own weird found family thing, like niche of people who can understand him, his own queer community and such.
I love this quote from the article. Suddenly you remove this big key piece, which is all about identity, and Elio just becomes about totally nothing.
It's like, listen, I know some people treat the idea of comparing and contrasting against other films gauche and mean because it's like, hey man, making a movie is a miracle and a half. you gotta give them respect that they actually got something made and put out. But it's also like, if I'm leaving a brand new Pixar experience saying, I liked the idea of this movie when it was a combination of Lilo and Stitch and Turning Red, and you would rather watch those two movies,
That's a problem.
That's a huge problem, man. Elio lost its luster, it lost its touch, its spark. And yes, there are maybe a scant few elements where you can see that it's like what it was originally about. But what we get is a boring movie, a forgettable movie. It has amazing animation, but you expect that by now from Pixar. They're pumping in $200 million to either use new tech to get over some kind of animation hurdle that they're famously known for, or it's reckless spending again because they had no finished script, like what Gunn would say. Even I think it was Owen Dennis of Infinity Train, no, or Patrick McHale of Over the Garden Wall, who said, like, let us finish the script so we can save you guys money. But they're like, but we gotta spend all the money. Why? Because we gotta cover the overhead. And it's like, you wouldn't have to cover the overhead if you let us finish the script.
It's like these studio executives forget like the most important rule when it comes to carpenters. Measure twice, cut once. And yet they insist on doing the opposite.
Well, what they do is haphazardly cut once and then say, don't worry, we'll buy 5 more planks of wood. And it's like, So the thing I did to prep for this was I watched the 2020 ensemble of Pixar animated features. I didn't get to all of them, but I didn't think I needed to rewatch Turning Red because it's a freaking amazing movie. But I watched the ones where I was wondering if I would find something worth talking about, because I feel like with what the final result of Elio became is the problem with the current animation scene in the US. And unfortunately, why Netflix is both the angel and the demon in the situation. Let's start this off. Pete Docter, either 2 years or a year ago, was confirmed to say, we're not going to do personal movies anymore. We are going to do more universal stories. And it's like, okay, well, I'm sure the director has a universal story or something that's extremely relatable to tell us. But then after I remembered that quote and then was thinking more and more about Elio after the article came out, it was like, wait a fucking minute. Did Pete Docter try to weasel his way out of like saying we're going to make more generic movies? Like, whether he remembers or not, which considering the fact he's willing to let Pixar execs who have no idea what they're doing to steamroll an entire production to essentially force them to remake the movie, but boring. It's like, how am I not supposed to take it as they're going to make more generic movies like Elio? Like, Elio didn't have to be generic, but for some reason, again, and this is a problem with Disney as well, outside of WALL-E, Pixar can't do sci-fi, and they're really bad at telling generic overall plots and themes with their movies. What I did was watch Lightyear, then Luca, then Elemental, then Onward. Because I already really loved Problems and All with Soul, because it to me with that in Turning Red and some aspects of Luca, feel like there's something here that Pixar is trying to do with their movies. But when I watched Lightyear, I feel like I'm going to one day say Lightyear is a good Pixar movie. Not that it doesn't have its fun elements or its like touching thematic story beats, or the fact that it's like, yeah, it's about how Buzz needs to not focus so much on one project and one goal because he let life pass him by. But do you remember any of the side characters?
Nope.
Do you even remember the always delightful Kiki Palmer was one of the main characters? What you generally remember about Lightyear is the weird production and marketing for the film of this is the movie Andy saw as a kid, even though it's not even really that. It like I wouldn't be surprised if Angus MacLane tried to make something closer to Lightyear of Star Command, but Pixar or Disney said no, you got to make it like a cool, epic sci-fi adventure. When the magic of Pixar, to me, and why Luca and Onward were so good was the fact that their films are specifically extremely personal stories. I don't know how Pete Docter, of all people, could come out of saying we're telling universal stories and not personal stories. It's like he threw his own movies under the bus because, like, to justify the fact that they're making a Toy Story 5 and a Coco 2.
He's been at Pixar from the very beginning, so the things that he's saying now, they don't sound like the young, hungry Pete Docter who was in the writer's room for Toy Story or working on his first directorial effort with Monsters, Inc. This is a guy who's become the corporate shell of himself.
It reminds me of the Mike Judge character from Common Side Effects, where I described him as if Hank Hill got a soul killing corporate job. And that's what Pete Docter has kind of turned into. He likes the idea of letting his creatives do what they think would be a fun story because like stuff like Win or Lose is a immensely ambitious creative idea. But then a Pixar exec who has no business being there is like, wait a minute, is that a trans storyline? You got to cut that out. You can't tell a trans storyline. And it's like, why the fuck not? And like Pete Docter is like, you gotta do what they say. I can't do anything about that. And it's like, you're the goddamn creative head and in general head of Pixar now. What the fuck do you mean you can't do anything about that? And who knows what exactly happened? Maybe he did fight super hard and he just comes off as like a wishy-washy or like a flimsy asshole here because of it. Because when the execs put back, like told them to rework Elio, they saw the new Elio and they were like, this is perfect. This is going to make so much money. And then I think, like, from what the article said, like, a mass majority of the queer animators or the animators who identified as queer just got up and left. They're like, no, fuck this. We're not working on this anymore. Like, do you know how damning that has to be and how soul killing that is to make you want to leave at a studio that is in general paying you better than most places will?
That has to just be demoralizing to
watch something so personal get torn asunder because a bunch of Pixar execs decided to listen to the mouth breathing incel man children who are probably all divorced dads because they got stupid and weird instead of just letting their creatives work. And yes, sometimes you'll get a creative who is like, I have an overly ambitious idea. This thing's going to tank. The thing with Pixar is the fact that Onward had a very personal story and perspective from the director because the director based it off his bond with his father and his brother. Like Turning Red is all Domishi, especially down to the fact that the mom awkwardly came to the school to be like, hey, I got your period stuff. And it's like, oh my God. Like, Pixar is not good at just general, universal, generic storytelling. Like, I'm sorry, they're just not good at that. Like, if I wanted to see something like that, I would go to Illumination, who has somehow made the perfect formula for the crowd pleasing $1 billion making animated feature.
There's nothing wrong with a movie that just, that hits a double instead of a home run. But when you're Pixar, when it comes to Pixar, they themselves have set a certain expectation just because of the quality of movies that they've been putting out since the 90s.
Listen, I think a lot of the Pixar hyper judgmental crowd are putting a bunch of unnecessary stress on Pixar, except for the fact that you are constantly looking at these Hollywood Reporter articles, like especially when these stories pop up, and they are constantly wanting to do something more ambitious and artfully creative. But either Disney or some of the execs who have no idea what they're doing are coming in and saying, no, you can't do that. Especially with the fact that we haven't even seen like a teaser trailer or a trailer or some kind of footage for their next movie, Hopper, and how they were having to apparently fight tooth and nail against the executives who wanted them to downplay the heavy emphasis and story of environmentalism. Like, which is so funny because that's exactly what the story of Wall-E is, you stupid fucks. Like, did you all forget that story in Wall-E, the one Pixar movie and slash the only Disney movie to ever appear in the Criterion Collection?
This is not just a problem with the animation industry. This is a problem with Hollywood in general, where it's like they forget about the history of the industry.
Like, even Jeffrey Katzenberg, shitty human being and corporate shill to all the worst parts of entertainment, at one point had a head on his shoulders where he understood what needed to be done at first. Like, we watched and talked about that, Not Just a Goof documentary, and everyone was like, we were just going to make a, in general, comedic, goofy movie, which, hey, I still would have watched that, but he came in and said, okay, well, this is fine and all, but I don't need this. Where's the heart? Give me the heart. What's the driving force of this goofy movie? And now wherever that left kind of got replaced by Quibi and shilling for generative AI. But that's the thing that's missing from a lot of Pixar movies these days. There's no personal perspective from Lightyear, unless Angus MacLane has said or something like, Buzz continuously focusing on the goal instead of enjoying life and letting years pass represents some weird meta-textual context to what it's like to work in animation, since, theatrical animated films take about 3 to 4 or even more years to make.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what happened with Lightyear. That's not what happened with Elio. Pixar wants to do something more and can't. And unfortunately, despite the fact that Disney has more money than God, one of the like 3 or so like entertainment companies that have more money than God, but then are wanting to penny pinch or like take full creative like ideas and shoot them outside, like in the back of the head behind the shed. And yet they're kowtowing to the hyper religious conservative politicians in states like Florida, or the overarching problematic demons running the world right now, where it's like, if we have one gay character or one non-white lead character, we're going to get our budget slashed. We're going to have the media is going to be mean to us. And it's like, don't listen to them. They are the vocal minority who are either not going to watch your shit in the first place, or we're going to go watch it out of some weird obligation which contradicts their goal of wanting to see woke Disney, quote unquote, die off or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening here. The fact of the matter is, outside of a few productions that aren't like Netflix before they stopped burning their money altogether, or, make a new pile to burn to the ground. Like, none of these studios are wanting to make something ambitious or interesting. Like, what happened to that Illumination studio that was going to do like more teen and adult media or and art for, instead of just doing the Illumination's Despicable Me way of making movies?
Oh yeah, Moonlight.
Yeah,
They
did they just
so
take that out back and shoot it?
I have no idea, but they announced that this, adult imprint was in development in September of 2022, and I'll only give them the benefit of the doubt in that animation takes a long time, blah blah blah. So maybe they're cooking up something now that we probably won't see till 2027, 2028. But still, the fact that Imprint was announced 3 years ago and we've had like nothing to show for it is concerning.
And throughout this whole time, since like the early 2010s, Sony is the only one letting more creative and experimental films get made. Granted, they're shoving the more identity based animated features onto Netflix because Sony movies do extremely well on the service, with films like The Mitchells versus the Machines, Wish Dragon, and recently with K-pop Demon Hunters. Even then, they're still making their crowd pleasers because they understand that not every film can or should be a Spider-Verse level thing, especially with what we know now about what happened with Across the Spider-Verse and the ghoulish ignorance of, we're going to release the next part next year. And it's just like,
About that.
yeah, no. Yes, I don't know about that goat movie they're making, but you know what? I get more curious and excited about a Sony Pictures animation film and whatever the creatives there are making than what's going on at Pixar and Disney. Like, am I hoping Zootopia 2 was good? Yes. Am I hoping for Hoppers to be good? Yes. Am I going to watch both movies? Yes.
Yes.
But are they in my most anticipated films of 2026, or in Zootopia 2's case, the end of the year? No.
Nope.
Because of like how the US animation scene treats audiences and what have you, I have been more curious and excited about what the rest of the world is doing. Because here's what's coming out from the US. By the time I'm recording this, the new Smurfs movie will be out, which nobody's really looking forward to that. The Bad Guys 2, which I hope is really good because it looks good. It will probably be super fun. I'm glad that the fact that it, even though it didn't break the bank, it did well in the long run. Because that's what you have to do. You can't just do short term profit and such. You have to play the long game with movies. So obviously, even though it did okay at the box office, it became a massive hit. So I'm glad about that. And then, of course, Genndy Tartakovsky's 2D adult animated comedy Fixed got saved by Netflix and will be there also in August. And then until golly, yeah, we're basically skipping October. Like, there's nothing else. I mean, yeah, you could say Gabby's Dollhouse the movie, but unless you're a tiny little kid that watches that show, you should not be going to this movie. And it's so funny how so many people got mad at this movie, where it's like, you guys are getting awfully mad at a preschool show getting a movie treatment that you don't have to actually watch. And then there's In Your Dreams, which is coming out November 14th, and Zootopia 2, November 26th, and the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants in December 19th. I would say maybe like a small handful of those movies sound exciting to me. I don't think I'm honestly all that excited for a whole lot there. Maybe Bad Guys 2 Fixed, and that's really it. And then I'm just kind of hesitant about Zootopia 2, In Your Dreams, and SpongeBob movie.
Out of those, the one I'm most excited for is the Bad Guys 2. Number 2 below that would be Fixed. And then I'm more curious than excited about In Your Dreams. I am looking for more animated musicals because that seems like something that's kind of become an endangered species lately.
Which is funny because of how Pinocchio won Best Animated Feature and it had musical numbers. When Disney was like, no, we're going to put out a sci fi adventure movie that y'all are going to love, when that didn't happen. And then Wish had incredibly mediocre music because it was all written by a pop star who had no idea what they were doing. And then Moana 2 sucked. Like, I don't know if I ever want to see that movie again, unless my cousin's coming to town and he wants to watch Moana 2. I can't see myself ever wanting to see Moana 2 again. Again, this is why I'm looking forward to, more or less, the foreign animation scene. We are getting that new Mononoke movie, the one based off of the horror anime, not the Miyazaki movie. But my favorite movies this year have all been non-US releases. And I don't think that's going to actually stop, because you see what G Kids did and how they just said, Neon bought so many movies. Let's go to Annecy and buy a good chunk of the movies with All You Need Is Kill, Another World, Chow, Little Amelie or the Character of Rain, 100 Meters. And I don't think we're going to, well, who knows when we're going to see Allah Is Not Obliged, which I don't know if we're going to count that as a movie of theirs, because I saw no announcement of them doing this. And yet they're like a co-production on the thing. So we'll see how that goes, because they're also co-producing that Sunny movie, which
isn't coming out till like 2029.
Yeah. And on top of that, all they really have left are like the Ghibli Fest movies. They are hopefully going to put out Ghost in the Shell 2 and Angel Egg out soon. And maybe at one point they'll be like, oh, wait, we still have to put Chicken for Linda and Sirocco and the Kingdom of the Winds out on Blu-ray. And Look Back isn't on Blu-ray yet. You think Look Back would have been on Blu-ray by now. But nope. Granted, I know they're putting out like, they're also, re-releasing the Mamoru Hosoda films because of Belle. Like, it is so funny how much better this foreign animation side of things is this year, that I completely forgot that Mamoru Hosoda is putting out a new movie with Scarlett.
Scarlett might actually be one of my most anticipated movies of, it comes out in November, right?
Yeah, no, December. Unfortunately, I think the same time period as the SpongeBob movie.
But still, the fact that we're getting a new Mamoru Hosoda movie is still a reason to be excited.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like there's the whimsical romantic comedy mermaid love story with Chow, the beautiful, luscious looking Little Amelie or the Character of Rain with that just amazing looking art style. 100 Meters being one of the few sports themed animated features that people are going to hopefully check out. Then like Another World, which is from China. And then again, All You Need Is Kill, sci-fi action. It's more exciting. These ideas are more compelling to me than what Pixar or Disney, and maybe even at points, depending on what they do exactly, DreamWorks. It just feels weird. I don't think 2025 has been a great year, at least for the US theatrical animation scene. The fact of the matter is, if I start cringing and shriveling up in my seat every time the either the earliest or the more recent trailer of the Smurfs comes out, it's like, oh god, that looks so bad. And everyone in the theater thinks it looks bad. Do you know how hard you have to fail to invest into something that is probably not going to be a success for Paramount?
That movie, unless I'm wrong, and somehow this movie drums up like a Gentle Minions boost in popularity, this thing is going to crash and crash hard.
Like, I know the Sony live action weird train wrecks, Smurfs movies did financially well reasonably, but that was also like a way different time period where the live action cartoon adaptations were running amok back then. Now it's like nobody does that anymore. Nobody cares about it. Outside of the remakes, which you all keep saying you don't want to see, but then go see anyway, I'm disappointed. I want to be more excited because the US animation scene is already hitting such a bad spot with not a whole lot of projects getting greenlit and the theatrical scene being basically sanded down to just get as many audiences as members as possible in the theaters without giving them something intellectual, interesting, or creative to watch, and then starving them to death for 4 or 5 months so they have to go see a Marvel movie or a Disney remake or something like that. It's just funny because like Elio is dying at the box office. It, as of recording this, has not crossed the $100 million line, which that's not going to cover the production costs that they went through
Oh,
to
hell no.
to remake the movie. It's probably going to have to be like $600 million to break even, depending on what happened and how much they spent for the overhead of reworking the entire movie. Netflix, while I love that they are willing to support and let directors make what they want or used to do, I hate that their movies are on streaming services. I hate the fact that I can't really look forward to a new animated feature from Netflix because they're basically going to be buying all the better deals that happen. Like, they have no initiative or reason to make their own movies, but are still going to do stuff like buy Animal Logic and then have them pump out so many movies. Like, so many middle of the road, mediocre experiences. Which sucks because I really love the Sea Beast and I love when they bring something over like Lost in Starlight. But there's nothing else. I don't know, man. Like, what do you think?
I will never take for granted the fact that I got to see Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio in theaters. And this was like a week before Netflix put out Glass Onion for like a week, and then it went straight to Netflix. I think Netflix needs to let go of their ego about streaming being the future, because we all know that movies that debut on streaming that premiered in theaters first often, actually no, always do better than streaming originals.
Again, but that's also what's going on here with the streaming releases, that Netflix is trying to copy the Disney or just overall industry mindset of give them something in January and then starve them for months. So whatever new animated feature gets released on Netflix will then become a huge hit. They want that Oscar win and the Sea Beast numbers so badly when a lot of their productions just don't have like the
Yeah.
spark, except for something like Ultraman Rising from last year, which if Aardman didn't come in and save their ass, I was thinking would have been their like pick for best animated feature because Ultraman Rising was such a big hit that even now the director of that movie is going to be working on a prequel John Wick animated feature for Lionsgate. Animation this year is in a weird spot. I don't like it. I don't like having to wait months on end for something to talk about because Viva Kid releases are so scattered and random that you don't know if you're going to get it until it's probably too late. And then they're just going to show up on Universal's Peacock streaming service out of the blue, which is pretty much what happens. No matter how good the movies get, no matter how amazing my top 10 is going to be once I get back from animation as film, it's not a good year. And it represents a lot of huge issues, not just at Pixar, but just as a whole in the world of animation. And I hope that changes, but it's going to take a while. Who knows what Hopper is going to be? Who knows what the future of that unfolds? Like, granted, I'm a little excited for that new movie by the Luca director that they're doing at Pixar about the black cat.
Oh, Gato?
Yeah, because of the painted visual look. But then I'm also worried that they're going to try to do a Disney's Wish situation where the background, they're like, we want this to look like an old Disney movie. And it's like, well, you know how you do that? You make a 2D animated feature. But instead, we got this weird hybrid compromise of lush colors and texture work, but something that, like our friend Aaron Clausen has said, not fully rendered character models. It's frustrating. It sucks. I don't like being this negative about stuff that I know the animators are doing their damnness because nobody wants to deal with executives who come in and say, I watched half your movie and I have 5 million notes. It's like, why don't you just come in and watch the other half of the movie?
Exactly.
Shut up. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm much more excited for whatever's coming out overseas this year. If Disney, Netflix, HBO Max, or whatever are pissed about that, well, you guys need to fucking make better movies. I mean, of course, they're going to chase that short form game of profit. So they're going to be like, well, Moana 2, despite sucking, was a huge financial hit. So why should we stop? Because it's going to fucking bite you in the ass.
We know that Hollywood loves to learn the wrong lesson from either success or failure. I'm terrified of the wrong lessons that Pixar might learn from Elio's box office disaster.
Because it's like, y'all ruined it yourselves. Pete Docter, you stood by while they tore asunder a cute or possibly like heartfelt queer like story. That's your fault. You can't blame everyone else. You can't be like Donald Trump blaming Biden for everything. Like when it's his goddamn fault for everything. And it's like, what if Hopper bombs? Like, is that just going to be like, we're going to hear, hey, we're making a Turning Red 2, or we're finally going to make a Brave 2 or whatever? It's like that whole thing with Disney apparently halting their production of a lot of their live action remakes to only then have no incentive or reason to stop them because a bunch of stupid families and people went to see Lilo and Stitch. And now we got a sequel for Lilo and Stitch coming out, and I hate it. I hate it. I freaking hate that, man. It's like we already have a How to Train Your Dragon 2. We don't need another How to Train Your Dragon 2. We don't need a sequel to Lilo and Stitch.
Just watch the Stitch anime.
Yeah, or just watch the TV series. I'm so exhausted from it all. If you had to put a gun to my head, what am I most looking forward to? It's all the G-Kid stuff and Scarlet.
Basically.
And I've had these years before where it's like, oh yeah, both sides of the world did amazingly well. And then there will be years where it's like, well, the US scene sucked, but I got to enjoy the foreign animation side of things. Or you do something like last year where it was just kind of kind of in the middle of everything. Not the best from both sides, but still some good stuff came through. So that's really it. That's where I'm going to stop this. Do you have any like closing arguments or any closing statements, Mike?
I want every year starting next year to be as good as 2022, where the US side of the animation was doing relatively well, but we also had great stuff on the foreign side. And we can get there. We just need people in top positions to actually give a shit about the medium.
We need people who want to see compelling stories because we know what happens when Disney and Pixar screw up and make a movie that has nothing compelling about it. Just a bummer of a year, man. Just with everything going on, it's hard to be excited for anything. I don't like that. I want to be a good supporter and cheerleader for all the hardworking animators and creatives out there. They're doing what they can. Making a movie sucks, especially when there's so much money behind it. Execs are breathing down your necks to make the biggest 4-quadrant film as possible. You just gotta let the creatives cook sometimes, man. Just let them be. Leave them alone.
Exactly.
So, next time, we're going to take a week off to watch all of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 and to watch and hopefully check out the compilation film that's coming out. Again, gee, kids, man, put out something that's not a compilation movie. And we're going to wash it all down begrudgingly with talking about Smurfs.
Hopefully we
Yeah.
survive that. But until next time, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
Well, first of all, we will be fine. You can find me on Blue Sky at Cam's Eye View. I have a website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. I am also a contributor to Media Magpies, your new one-stop shop for film and media discourse. Please give them some support. They are amazing at what they do.
And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Blue Sky at Renegade Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. You can escape, so do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.